Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here today to present the new moon chart for January 18th, 2026. It occurs at 2:51:41 p.m. So in the afternoon, we will see a new moon. So we're coming upon it. It's a strange new moon. I do want to point out a couple of things right away that I think are important. First of all, I'm going to start by looking at a pizza pie chart here, which normally I wait until we get to my solar fire program, which has all the asteroids in it. We'll get there too, but I just want to talk about this first. This 29 degrees, 37 minutes of mutable is not only at a very interesting point because it's literally less than 30 minutes from not only the Aries point, but also from the new sign. Okay, so it's at the very, very end of Gemini. Within 30 minutes, within actually 23 minutes, it would become the next sign, which is Cancer. So it's an Aries point. All right, so let's talk about the Aries point. And before I go on, look at 725 Pisces up here, okay? Now, that's also an Aries point, all right? So, and I go through this when I do the asteroids in solar fire, and I will go through that again, but I needed to point out the importance of this because it is Washington, D.C.'s chart. Both the ascendant and the midheaven are definitely playing out on the larger world stage. So, with that said, we could really look at this time as rather interesting. Just, again, bear with me. Here we have at the cusp of, and it's interesting I'm doing this in the Uranian program, but at the cusp of the second house, we have another Aries point picture. This one's out 27 minutes. Oh no, I lie, 17 minutes. So it's not far out, okay? Just like the midheaven is only 5 minutes out and the ascendant is only 23 minutes out. Here we have 17 minutes. So the reality is we're looking at the United States in the world view, okay? And that's the truth. Okay, so we're making a real presence in the world. And you know what's interesting is here we have another one, 1449 is about 11 minutes out. Okay, so with all of these house cusps, which means so is the third house cusp. The problem that we're seeing, okay, is that the way the United States thinks, how they handle money, and who they think they are, and how they want to appear on the world stage are all really magnified in this particular new moon. Today is the 14th. I don't know if it'll get out today. I don't know if I'll finish it today, but I can tell you that we're already seeing some of this with the threats to all these other countries after what they've done to Venezuela. Now, you might say to yourself, well, how does that affect the individual? Okay. Well, I don't see how it's not affecting the individual. So it's like you're in a government that's trying to take over the world. And, you know, we're used to seeing that happen in Russia and even China, but to see it happen here is heartbreaking, okay, because we've always enjoyed celebrating the sovereignty of other countries. But we do have a very interesting government, and I like the fact that we are talking about the second house, the 8th house, the 9th house, the 3rd house, along with this. Why, you say? Because one of the big issues is money. And if you notice, Volcanus is in the 2nd house. A lot of pressure about the value. And look at this very, very full 8th house, combined resources, joint resources, with the pressure coming from the how much are you worth, okay? I know for a fact, and I know we're all going to be finding this out, that we have thieves in the government, and this is not a political video, but I want you to think about this and in terms of how it affects you on the micro level. If, in essence, you have people over you who are stealing your money, please know that that's going to come all the way down to you at some point, okay? Whether it's big corporations not paying you what you deserve, whether it's the government literally pulling away maybe monies that you were counting on. And I'm thinking of things like SNAP. I'm thinking of things like, or WIC. I'm thinking of things where these are aids to help people, particularly people with children, and there's massive thievery going on. I like the fact that these guys have only been in office 1 year, and already our debt has multiplied. So, and if you think that's not going to be an issue down the road, you're really mistaken. It will be. Because with less resources, there can be less help and less aid, which means, again, if you're somebody who has a little bit, you're going to need to share that little bit. If you're someone who has not, you're going to have to depend upon neighbors and communities to help you out. So realize that though I don't do political for a lot of reasons, mostly I don't like the trolls, it's because, you know, this still is going to affect us on a micro level. So please be aware that I can tell you right now that having gone through what I've gone through, that they've changed laws that maybe we're not aware of. And they're getting away with things that even a year ago, we would have been okay, you know, we would have been covered for. Let's put it that way. So I do want to tell you that there's going to be a lot of pressure on each individual, particularly in this area, but I don't see how it doesn't affect the whole world, that they're very concerned with how much money you're worth. Why would somebody be concerned about that? So there's a lot of questions here that will become unanswered. How is it that we in the United States are dominating so much of the world conversation? And again, how does that affect us as individuals? Well, it does, because let's be honest here. How often have we blamed the Russians for Putin's behavior? Okay. How much have we blamed the Jewish culture for the workings of one man, Netanyahu? Okay. These people are not reflecting their people. Okay. They're doing what they want to do. Well, it's happening to us. Maybe it's a good thing because now we can say, hey, wait, we didn't vote for this. We didn't want this. Because the rest of the world is going to also come back and say, those Americans. When in essence, we're actually under fire by our own government. Okay, look what's going on in the world. So again, I don't want to elaborate too much, but I do want to point out that what is going on in this country is the world's conversation, and that is going to affect you even on a micro level. Okay? I can honestly say that this right here might be a lack of trust. And see all these planets here in Capricorn, that's a lack of trust in the government. And how the government is handling money. It is going to affect us on an individual level, and that is unfortunate. So let's get off of the bad news and let's look at better news, because even though they're doing this to us, they cannot stop us living our lives and being the creative individuals that we are with our own sets of skills, talents, and abilities. If anything, people, because of this pressure being applied by our government, we have an opportunity now to come out of our shell, so to speak, and begin to discover what it is that we have to offer as people. Not as a government, which is how we've always done everything, but as people, because that's where the true power is. In all the things that I've studied, history, the Bible, I've studied all these things, all related to historical context. And I can tell you that political systems have been manipulating us and indoctrinating us from the beginning of time, at least recorded time. And I think that in all of that, and I think of things like particularly the Bible, we've lost our power. And with everything going on, as bad as it is, we're going to develop our power and our value and our self-worth. And that's not just here, guys. Remember, we're an example to the rest of the world as we do this tap dance we see before us. Do it well. Our neighbors are watching. And that's the best way I can put it. So I want to move on. Got through my little Aries point garbage, which was a lot. Okay. And you know, I might mention it again, we get to solar fire, but then I want to really concentrate on the asteroids because then we can see the details of how we're appearing. So here we see an Aries point chart. Okay. Now, all of that sounded like such bad news. It's not all bad news. Okay. No, yeah, there's some, but there's a lot of good news this time. Now, let me point out a few fractions to you. First of all, there's nothing in this Aries point that is this one. Wait till I get to the next one. That is going to really stand out here. The dots don't affect anything but Chiron. Now, Chiron is that healer that's been wounded. So because of the wounds, he's able to heal. Okay? The wounded healer, they like to call him. But it's also alternatives. It's also doing things in many ways differently because we were inspired by our own tears, our own wounding points. And ironically, it is a sign that we are healing. As a world, we're finding our voices. Now, it will take different degrees of time as to how many voices are heard and will represent change. But I got to tell you, we're still at the beginning of the change, so it doesn't matter. You can't really stop what's already been put into process. So this Aries point didn't show us a lot. This one, however, did. And I have all my notes here because that's how it is. Okay. All right, so I want to talk about this because this is really interesting. Okay. Now, we have been having Uranus with Pluto for some time, and I talk about it. That's those changes by leaps and bounds. And we're not able to see the changes very well because of Neptune. Okay, we're under a lot of illusion, disillusion. Okay. I also want to talk about how Chiron is playing out with the midheaven. Okay? And that's going to cause its own changes. Now remember, the midheaven is the Aries point. Okay? So it's like an Aries point to an Aries point. And the same thing with Chiron, you're going to find out it's an Aries point. And what's happening with all of this is that there's going to be some very focused changes that take place. Things that we've gotten devoted to and we haven't realized it, but then we will. We're going to realize it, I think, next month. So by the end of next month. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. So you've got Admetus, which is that focus, which is that blockages, which is, you know, and we the people are blocking things. Okay, no, I'm sorry. The energy, which is Mars, Admetus Mars, it's like it's stopping. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. Again, I'm going to the political because it's the bigger picture and this is all Aries point. But there is plans for walkouts People are just going to stop going to work. They're going to stop going to school. They're going to stop doing everything. And it's planned for January 20th is a big one for the whole country. But I think that Minnesota is already starting. We're just going to stop. We're just going to stop. Okay? So let's talk about that. Here's the news. Okay? One of the reasons why people are upset is a lot of our news has been blocked. We don't really get news anymore. I think that's, unless you're reading independent news, which I do, but when you're looking at the television, that's not news, that's garbage. Okay, that's just a narration. Okay, and that's why their numbers are dropping drastically. It really is like a lazy man's efforts at news. So we're not getting, there we go with blockages. There's going to be a focused energy looking at some of these things, though, and I think that that's real, and that's going to be a factor. Okay, Uranus to Venus and Uranus to Pluto are actually good things. Okay, so we're being forced. There's a saying in astrology: being forced to one's own good fortune. Okay, look at these two, okay, and this one. This is healing. So I think that because America is going to go through some crap, it's forcing the healing. It's forcing us to look at, we've not always been good people. We've not always been a good country. We've not always done the right things. Okay, as a matter of fact, we have done more to destabilize Central and South America in our history. And then complained about immigration, it just blows my mind. Okay, but that reality, I think, is hitting everybody. So again, not to stay political. I like to stay more in our everyday lives, but I just feel like this is affecting us in our everyday lives. But let's talk about it in a more general term. This is a very high voltage, event producing configurations. And I am looking at this totality. Okay, so when I use AI, because I can. Now, I've had to correct it, but that's part of my job using it. But it is, and I had to correct it with some of this, I might add. But or I didn't really correct it, let's just say perfected it, okay? It is going to affect us all. So high voltage event producing. High voltage events are definitely in the making. This can be the result of a crisis that brings about a change. What I've been talking about, requires absolute focus and leads to irrevocable transformation. That's everything in a nutshell. Okay, so we are changing as people. We, you and I, are changing. We will not be the same after this is over. I already know that I did my astrology for next year, which is this year, and mine's coming up. And I'll be honest with you, I'm blown away by some of the stuff I'm seeing because it's so different than other years. I know that I'm changing because I went through the broken ankle, broken foot thing. I went through a hacking thing, all of these things, and dealt with the banks. And went through all of this stuff, and it does make you wiser. Lots of tears. There's your Chiron. So it does cause that. It also speaks to a wounding, or those who are wounded, and then they become authority figures. So we're not only seeing, and I think they're having problems in England, I know they're having problems in Iran, I know we're having problems here, but what we're also seeing is the very human qualities of our leaders and how wounded they are in their processes and in their thinking, and how this wounding is affecting their decisions. It's an event-driven, a publicly activated situation. Something that breaks into the open. It's like just, whoa, who saw that coming? Okay, so get ready for this. It's good for us as individuals, though. I know that sounds like counterintuitive, but we're going to learn to be more self-sustaining. We're going to learn to be more creative. And those of us with critical thinking abilities will rise to the top, okay? And not everyone has that. And I can tell you that that is the one thing we need to develop more than anything, is the ability to critical think, okay? It's a time of shock, rupture, and awakening. Here's your Uranus. It's going to lead to irrevocable transformation related to survival and power. Sudden transformations. The realization we cannot go back. Uranus and Pluto. We can be exposed to hidden power structures. In other words, truths are going to be coming out. There's that Mercury. Right now it's blocked. Not for long. Uranus and Vesta can indicate changes in our work, our goals, or related to our work. We can also be exposed to painful truths through this. Vesta, Uranus. This can often feel like a fated rather than a chosen time. So what we need to be wary of right now is burnout. Ultimately, this sudden change also creates opportunities for awakenings. That's why you can't afford to be burned out. What we are devoted to can and will change. Or it'll begin to change. New goals can come out of nowhere. Okay, we are looking at the evolution of the consciousness of the humanoid experience. Okay, we are changing. We are evolving. Our frequencies are raising. You know, in history, I'm going to use this as an example. We look back at things like slavery or what they did to the Indians and we think, oh my God, what were they thinking? Well, they weren't, because we're not at the evolution stage that we are. Okay, we're at a different place. Evolution, our consciousness, our awareness. We're not so icky about talking about aliens anymore. As a matter of fact, young people talk about them all the time. And the reveal, the great reveal, is upon us, which is, when nobody can deny they're here. So that's what I mean by critical thinking. We're going to need these extra abilities, if you will, to begin to lay the groundwork for where the world is going. And the irony of ironies is, people, we all decided to be here for this. Okay, so let me move on. And I want to look at, I'm going to do it here just for a moment, the Sun-Moon axis, which again, this part of the axis is very quiet. Sort of like looking at the axis of Aries point from the Capricorn Cancer experience. There just wasn't a lot. There's like no real dots. There's nothing here to really jump out at me. Okay, that's what the asteroids are good for. Now, if I go to, let's see if I get this right. Let's do this one. Okay, 6 Cap 13. Okay. Let me enter it. There we are. Okay. Now, ironically, let's make sure that I'm right. Oh, yeah. 6 Capricorn. So this would be, hold on. Yep, 6. And then this would be 6 Aries. I'm better off doing this on the dial. Let me show it this way, because that's still only one axis. We still have more to go. This, though, the 6 degree thing here, okay, again, I'm not seeing a lot. But the sun and moon. But we are looking at Hades ascendant as a midpoint. Okay? So that we're looking at poverty. We're looking at lack. We're looking at deterioration. Okay? So, that's with the ascendant of the United States, where some of that stuff is really beginning to show up. But let's look at this on a 90-degree dial. Okay, now we get it, okay? So on the 90-degree dial, which again would be better to look at, and I will, because that's where all the midpoints show up. Here, though, we do have Saturn Kronos, which could be separations of leaders. We've already seen that. Biliterally, a partner, So, and look for that even in terms of the, even in, I want to say even in your workplaces, okay? I just want to see, that, just look for that. I'm going to talk about that at greater depth. So let me get to my next program, because I think that's part of the problem. I go back and forth in these programs when I set up the notes. So sometimes I can see things on one program that I can't see on another. And sometimes I'm really dependent on my asteroids and extra ring points. I'm back. So I'm looking at the 90-degree dial. Let's, and we can see lots of midpoints. So again, one program versus another program, all this stuff. I mostly use the dial on here. The other dial doesn't include as much information now. The new programs coming out, according to Gary, will include both. So it'll be interesting to see what that's going to be like to work with. And by the way, he was really helpful with some of this computer stuff I had to go through. Okay, so let's look first of all at the chart itself and the points around it. So you can see here again, the chart was perfect. Okay, so the chart turned out perfectly in terms of numbers. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But where it started to get off was here. Okay, remember this was 22. Now it's not. Remember that this was 14. Now it's not. So some of the structures of the house did change. Okay, so I did want to also point that out, that on one program it shows a lot of this showing up in the Aries point, but in this chart, not so much. So I don't know which one is more accurate, and so I'm going to give you interpretations on both. Gary said timing-wise, which would be the actual ascendant and midheaven would be better in solar fire, but he didn't say anything about the houses. So I don't know, okay, because we had those same numbers, but we got different houses. So moving along and just looking at this to see what we can get, I can tell you that by 10 minutes, Isis is on the Aries point, and what it's telling us is that things are going to be done in pieces this month, that you would be better off to do things piece by piece, okay? It also points out, here's one at 1907, which is when it comes to the way certain things are going to go, you might say that it's going to go one way, and intuitively it follows that path, but when you get to the end, especially when you find out how much whatever it is worth, you're going to find out it didn't go at all the way you thought. Okay, it didn't end up that way. Okay, moving along, this one does have, if you noticed, we have Hera, which is scorekeeping, which is partners, right at the IC. And this could be anything from partners literally scorekeeping in the house to accounting with regards to money within a household and how oppressive it is. Now, the oppressive is more in the fourth house, but I thought it was pretty interesting that when you go from one to the other, it is interesting. But I do feel as though there is, it's about 20 minutes away, that there really is a lot of scorekeeping and a lot of issues with regards to partnerships. And this doesn't really relate only to the home environment. It can be also partnerships in general or one-on-one type encounters. Okay. It can also be people from the past that you're getting together with. Okay, interesting. And I mean that in terms of even in my business, people I haven't heard from for a while, I'm now hearing from again, and that's in terms of private work, charts, and that's one-on-one. That's very much Hera and Juno in that work, because I work exclusively one-on-one. At least right now I do. I'd love to teach again, but those things hadn't panned out the way that I thought they would. There you have that Pythia. Okay. Anyway, getting over to what we have here in the fifth house. Now, this is interesting because it's right inside of the house of expression. And in this program, this is like a remaking of ourselves. Well, we are going to be remaking ourselves. That is definitely something I've spoken about. Okay, I've changed what this icon means, though, in the next computer. I changed it up to Medusa. In this one, it's still Make Me. In the here we have at 20 degrees, 19 is really not 2147, so it's really not in there. But there is an attitude when it comes to work of just do it. Just do it. Just do it. I just said to my daughter, who's having a really hard time with regards to her new job, that sometimes all you can do is put one foot in front of the other. It's not really a strong cuspy thing. I just thought I'd mention it. Brings us all the way. Well, here again, I think I would rather look at the Niobe, which is our pride, but it's also our children. And maybe our children with regards to their education or how smart they are, whatever. But be careful, because on the other side of that, from the eighth, which is, resources, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and all that other good stuff, is Alicia. And Alicia is like a humiliation. So it's like the fall before, Watch your pride is what I'm going to say, is watch what you're proud of, because it might butt you in the butt. Okay. And then on this cusp, we have, and this is on Calypso. And when it comes to what's going on out in the world, okay, and this is for everybody, but for particularly people that live here, but remember, it is an Aries point. Don't think you know everything that's going on, because you don't. There is so much that is being kept from us, okay, that I do believe eventually it does come out. And the reason why, and it's only in by 2 minutes, is we are going to be questioning the things that are not there, okay? We're just going to question it. And that's going to be good. So as people start questioning what you see at the Aries point, so regardless of where you live in the world, start thinking about questioning what is going on, okay? You won't get an answer always, but the fact that you're questioning is good. It's good. It's going to be healing. And it's about critical thinking. Demeter is about parents, children, food. It's about nurturing, okay? It is in, way in, via the 11th house. Our associates, our groups, our communities. These are the smaller gatherings of people that connect, maybe like-minded people. And I really feel that there is a lot of an abundance of alternative type things out there. But I think it's really interesting that the house itself is cusped by food. If you have problems with food, this might be a time to go to the community food bank and get yourself some help, okay? I want to tell you that Hades is coming to Kronos, and even though it does point out the corruption in our leaders and our high-level people, and we are going to be finding this out, and there is a lot of corruption, which is, by the way, it means sickness. I love that. I learned that from Heather in a history lecture. But there is a lot of corruption, a lot of sickness within the structures, and particularly within people who are leading. And you're going to find out just how corrupt things are, and that goes on. I mean, that's just coming in, by 32, we are all fighting corruption. But with that said, the reality of the abundance of alternatives for people in need will also be greater, because Hades Kronos is also about charity. And It's also about medicine. So there's other things that will be at play here that will be beneficial. And nothing in astrology is all good or all bad. Good leads to corruption more often than not. It has in this country. And I think that bad brings good. But sometimes the bad things that are happening in the world bring out the best in people. Our compassion for Gaza, our compassion for people starving in Somalia and compassion for our own neighbors has an opportunity to grow. Okay, so as I go around, and there's nothing else. That's it for this. I want to talk about, as I always do, the midpoints. Okay, so as we look, this is the initial midpoint structure, and you can see there's a lot more showing than we had seen. Not that we couldn't go look for it. But here's one axis, okay? Uranus ascendant, Poseidon Cupido. We're going to go through all this, okay? I'm going to talk about it. But then you also have 4, 5, 6, here we go. There's our other axis. Oops, I'm going to go to where it really is, right there. And this axis, which has Volcanus Midheaven and Hyades Saturn and EQ Venus, which is an equatorial ascendant. You also have Venus node. And I'm going to talk about Venus node in concepts with Jupiter because there is something there. We'll get to that, okay, when I get to the axis points. Let's talk about what do these midpoints mean, okay? So we had Volcanus Midheaven equaling then the sun and the moon, which is, by the way, power of the people. Power of the people! And that's an Aries point. So even though we might see more in the United States with regards to power of the people, and we're seeing it in Minnesota. Michigan, somebody stood up too, but that's a whole other thing. This is power of the people, and I think this is everywhere, okay, because that is an Aries point midheaven. So, how interesting, right? So there is an Aries point there. Hyades Saturn, which is serious losses and hostility. This is what we're seeing. There's gatherings with the Uranus ascendant. Remember, I talked about that. There's gatherings with others, and we're excited by the actions of other people, so we're responding to one another. There will be separations. There also will be dead people. We are in a revolution crisis where people will be checkmated. This is people in charge as well as the people. There's a religious or a mental community at play here. Okay, so there again, it comes back to where are we in a consciousness? How do we think and feel as people? Poseidon is propaganda and being gaslit, but it's also a deeper understanding of spirituality within our communities. Okay, and we also have that Venus, which is, and there's a Jupiter node, which I'll get to in a bit. All of that talks about being treated well by other people, that we are going to treat each other better. We're not going to stand against immigrants in this country. We're just not. We are the immigrants. So the fact that our government thinks that we will get behind this, I think is wrong, because I don't think somebody should be deported for a DUI. I just don't. I don't think somebody who came into the country illegally and is waiting to start the legal process should be deported. I don't think people who are here for our protection should be kicked out. So I'm not the only one. And I think that we're going to see. But this is going to hold true if you see bullying occur on your job. This is going to occur if you see a neighbor doing something to another neighbor. I just don't think any of these things are going to sit well anymore, okay? And can I just tell you that what is going on, and though it's chaotic and crazy, is bringing us solutions. All of us. So, in that respect, there's some good news. Okay. Also, look what's down here. This is called Selena. She's the white moon, Selena. But I will tell you that what she represents is talent, skills, and abilities we didn't even know we had. And if we hadn't been thrown into these crises, we would have never known. So pick that up, guys. Pick it up, run with that ball. That's how we truly change this world. Okay? Finding out that we have corrupt leaders doesn't necessarily change things. We've had corrupt leaders since the beginning of time. We still have corrupt leaders. So, again, what will change that is us. We, the people, need to change. Okay. So, now I'm going to go into, now that I've gone through all of the pictures and that kind of stuff, and it takes me forever to get through these anymore, let's look at, first of all, let's look at the sun axis, all right? And again, I only go a degree, so that's why it does affect everybody in the world. I'm not even going 10 degrees out on angles or any of that stuff that you can do when you're doing actual charts, because I don't want it to be centered on DC. I want it to be a world thing so that we can all get something from it. So let's start with what I see here, which is the first asteroid that shows up is a Uranus energy. It's Prometheus. He's the one that gave people fire. Okay? And Uranus was such a big factor in the shock element and all of that. So isn't it funny how this works? And you know what's really, really shocking us is our crone, our authorities, our Cronus, are they credible? You have to think about that, because honestly, they don't appear to be very credible, and yet it's almost like they're the force. They're the phaethon, which is what it's saying, that is causing this uproar. So it doesn't matter where you live, this is going to be a true statement, okay? And it is going to put a stop or a block on them with Adamite, okay? And that all comes together. So very, very interesting, very, very interesting time that we're living in right now. Remember, we all chose to be here. I know that's hard to believe, but we chose to come. We raised our hand and said, hey, we'll help with this. I don't know what we were thinking, but that's a fact. Okay, one of the things that might come to our attention through this process is odd couples. The coming together of people that's odd. Now, it might be in your own personal life, you're looking out and you're saying, oh, wow, what a weird, they're dating. Well, that's odd. They're very different people. So stuff like that could come to you. But I'm thinking in the big picture, it could also be crones coming together that seem odd. This could be bosses that are working together in big businesses. This could be what's going on even right now with Trump takes the Venezuelan president out, but doesn't change the government. Well, that's odd. Okay, so that means on some level they're partners, or they're partnering with that government, even if it's through the vice president. So just weird, weird, weird. And we are going to see that. We're going to be pondering those things. The other thing is that notice how in the middle, how people in a crisis can be charming. I hate to say it, the woman who died, her last comments would fit this. She was kind right to the end and charming, okay? So when we look at things like that we're going to see more of that. Sometimes when people are stealing from you, they're also charming. Or when they're denying you your rights, okay, for an area of your rights for some reason. They can be very charming. Again, I'm skipping a lot of area because there isn't, like I said, it's quiet in some areas and not quiet in others. It's like a real concentration and then not a concentration. Okay, so I'm looking for Yep, nothing there. Yeah, I went through whole column just about there. And moving on. Yeah, it's going to be for our next one. Okay. I'm going to try to skip the Aries point here until I get to it because that's a little bit separate, but there's some interesting things in the Aries point. This, what I'm doing right now, is the sun-moon axis for that new moon that we're dealing with. And we've got panacea, which we talked about, which is the solving of problems. We will be able to solve some of the problems that we're seeing. Why? Because we're tuning into our consciousness. Okay? Really important to look at that. We're becoming more conscious, more aware. I would think that would be to the dismay of some of the people. Look for actors, okay? People who are acting. Okay, they're pretending. There's a lot of pretenders out there. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you an example. Don't want to use politics, but I can't have to. Trump, who's going to release the Epstein files. No, he wasn't. He's in them. Okay? So, things like that. He's just acting. He's acting because he knows you want to hear that. So you have to be aware of that because I think other people are doing it to you in your life and you have to be aware of it. The other thing is there's a lot of memories here, a lot of memories, remembering, remember this, remember that happened, remember this happened, okay? I know that our government likes to think we have short memories, but I think that one of the things that's happening through these processes that we're going through is, as we develop our critical thinking skills, we're also remembering more, okay? More stuff for the Aries point. I'll get to that. The partnership thing, it's out by 3 minutes. I showed it to you with Hera, but with it on a house cusp, but it's only out by 3 minutes from the sun-moon axis too. So the idea of one-on-one partnerships, scorekeeping, keeping track of finances, accounting, all of those things come under Juno. Okay? Astrea tells us none of this will be over quickly. None of it. This is something that's going to be somewhat ongoing. And by the way, the power of the people stuff, that's way ongoing because it really aspects directly the moon and the sun as a conjunction. So that's really good. As we look down here, watch out for lies. Okay, literally lies is only 1 minute out of the aspect. Okay, God, do we get lied to on a regular basis. Okay, the other thing is photography, pictures. Okay, they're going to be really important in this next new moon. Photography, video. It's really going to point out the lies, people. That's the best way I can put it. It really is going to bring up the lies. Some of these things that we're going through, you have to, in order to be logical, you might have to take a path on your own. Like, in other words, Urania is in here, and Urania stands for astrology. It's that rational thought. We're going to be very rational. We're going to think this through. And you might find that you have to do that on your own because maybe it's better. Maybe you're coming to different conclusions than the people around you. And that would all fit in that as well. So at this point, as I'm raging on, let's talk about the Aries point. Last but not least. Good news is Brassices has moved on. Okay, so I talked about that for how many charts, right? So that's a good thing. But Chiron is still there. We talked about that. Chiron is way in there, okay? And that's something that has definitely been played out. As we get to, oh boy, okay, Isis I talked about. Doing things in pieces, looking at things in smaller increments, not being overwhelmed, Put one step in front of the other. Yes, there's a lot going on. You will be okay. One step in front of the other. Boy, I tell you, there really isn't a lot. But then you get to one of the things that we have to really pay attention to is stopping something that could be affecting our health or the health of our partner. Okay, so there may be some health factors. And remember, Hera's big, Juno shows up, and now we have Hera showing up in the Aries point, which we already knew, with DRS, stopping a partner, Asclepius, health. Okay, so that's going to play a part. Then it brings us to an asteroid called Brunetto. Now, it could be brunettes, okay, but it also deals with fires, cremations, things of that sort. So look for that as it's showing up with Letitia, which means there could be fires that will disrupt or interrupt something. Okay? We move on and we have Panacea, which means we will be solving some, oh, I'm sorry. Wait. That wasn't what I wanted to say. I already said Panacea. I've already been through all that. I'm actually down here at Polaris. Again, watch your health. Some people with health issues will get worse. It's also talking about health coverage. The only country in the world that's supposed to call itself first world, and we have no health insurance. Okay, no health coverage, period. So watch that. There's going to be some stuff in the news about that. I can tell you, look out for bullies. Although I do feel karma's coming to the bullies, okay? Karma's coming with the bullies. So there is some bullying there that's pretty interesting. Libitina tells us there will be tears. There will be tears. Again, no matter where you live in the world, some of this stuff is going to bring you to tears. Varda is also referring to the truth that will set you free. When we do learn the truth, it is going to be not nasty as all get out, but if there is a truth, it will be freeing. It will feel better to us. As I move on, yeah, Calypso. Just watch out for the things we do not know. We just do not know. And continue to question things you do not know, just as I've already brought up, because they fall. Oh, that's the sun. That is actually the Aries point. Yeah. It's not, it makes a trine to the 6 degrees that, or a trine or a golden triangle, if you want to call it, to the point, or it's actually a sextile, to the point that the Capricorn point that I pointed out, which we're at right here with Panacea. Okay? And what that is telling us is that we really do need to start asking questions, people. We need to be the power that we are. We need to own it. We need to take it back. It's something that we lost a long, long time ago. I think that's going to come out to how we lost our power as people. Because we did. We lost it when they took 88 books out of the Bible. Let's start there. So we're talking about millennials, millennial time periods where we've literally lost our power millennials ago. So it's time for us, I think, to start questioning that, to take our power back, and let this be the new moon of the power of the people, no matter who you are, no matter where you live. With that said, I wish you only happy readings, and I thank you for watching this video and supporting this channel.